The Old Guard 2's ending revolved around Andy and her team's efforts to stop Gwyn from setting off a bomb in a nuclear facility in Jakarta, Indonesia, thereby killing millions of people. Approximately 500 years ago, Andy's lover, Gwyn, was captured for performing witchcraft, stuffed inside an Iron Maiden, and chucked into the sea. Andy and the other immortals apparently searched for her for quite a while, but without access to any modern tech, they had to give up. While Andy and her friends chose to reshape the world by helping humanity, Discord, the first immortal, with seemingly infinite resources, sought to rescue Gwyn after bearing witness to her punishment by drowning. Now, here's where things get convoluted. Gwyn supposedly joined hands with Discord so that they could annihilate the species that forced her to die and resurrect on a loop for 5 centuries. But Discord used Gwyn to capture Nile and the rest of Andy's gang so that her lost immortality could be restored and Nile could fulfill her dream of making everyone mortal. Why? Well, allow me to figure it out on the fly. Since the first film, it was kind of obvious that Booker wanted to die because he couldn't share his gift of immortality with his family, especially his youngest son, Jean-Pierre. That was the reason why he betrayed the Old Guard and sent them all to Merrick, as he thought that he could bring an end to the powers that they had all grown weary of anyway. But when he saw that Andy's immortality had faded and Merrick was planning to torture his friends endlessly, he switched sides one last time. By then it was too late, as Merrick captured him and Andy and sent them to his torture chamber, where Joe and Nikki were already being subjected to all kinds of tests. Eventually, they were rescued by Nile and Copley, and Booker was exiled for 100 years. That punishment was cut short by Gwyn and Discord's reemergence, as the former used Booker to send a message to Andy. Once reunited with the group, Booker got in touch with a relatively new recruit of the Guard, Tua, who was highly knowledgeable about the history and biology of the Immortals. He was already researching the reason behind Andy's mortality when a chance encounter between Discord and Nile made him privy to information that Nile was the last immortal. Based on that info and some ancient texts, Tua posited the theory that the last immortal was capable of turning an immortal into a mortal, specifically by stabbing them. I say that because, in the first film, other than stabbing Andy, Nile had shot herself in the leg, literally. That didn't turn her into a mortal, which is why I think a blade is integral to this process. In addition to that, Tua revealed that immortality could be passed on from one immortal to a former immortal right when said immortal was about to lose their powers. However, the one giving away their power would have to do so willingly, not by force. Since Booker was tired of life in general, and wanted to rid himself of his guilt of betraying Andy and the group, he prepared to restore Andy's immortality. Firstly, he took part in a sparring session with Nile, where he got slashed with her sword. Since he wasn't healing, he knew that his powers were gone. Secondly, while preparing to travel to Indonesia to stop Gwyn from blowing up the Serpong nuclear facility, he secretly transferred his powers to Andy. By the time Andy realized what Booker had done, he sacrificed himself by fighting off a horde of Discord's men who were trying to either capture Andy or prevent her from stopping Gwyn from pressing the detonator. Yeah, I know, the method of transferring one's immortality is very wishy-washy. I suppose the need for consent from both sides, the one giving the power and the one receiving it, would have made things a little more interesting. The way Booker gave Andy his powers made it seem like it was as easy as slipping a note into an unsuspecting person's bag. On top of that, since these two movies hadn't done too good a job of establishing Booker and Andy's bond, this sacrifice felt weightless. Anyway, in case you need confirmation, yes, Booker is dead, and Andy is an immortal again. Gwyn was miffed at the fact that, instead of dedicating her life to finding her in a random part of the ocean, Andy had spent the last 5 centuries helping mankind. After they met, Andy was apologetic about failing Gwyn. Of course, that wasn't enough for Gwyn. On top of that, as soon as Andy said that, as immortals and warriors, it was their duty to safeguard mankind from themselves, Gwyn lost her cool. She was angry at humans already because of the seemingly endless torture she had been subjected to. But the fact that the love of her life was willing to be their protector instead of going on some kind of revenge mission to eradicate humanity, I suppose, was something that Gwyn couldn't digest. So, she chose to side with Discord and trigger a nuclear event that'd potentially destroy the entire country. If you're wondering why Discord and Gwyn chose Indonesia as their target, my best guess is that it was the least guarded nuclear facility in the world, which made it easier to breach and set up the trap for the guard. I thought that there might be some greater sentimental reason, but I couldn't find one. I suppose Discord and Gwyn made some kind of a deal where the latter would be allowed to set the world on fire if she allowed Discord to abduct the guard. But then what would be the point of abducting the guard and becoming super immortal if the world became unlivable? I don't exactly know. Anyway, during the battle between the guard and Discord's army, who were temporarily working for Gwyn, Niall sliced through Gwyn's stomach, thereby making her immortal. With nowhere left to go, Gwyn sat down with the trigger for the bomb in her hands, prepared to set it off as soon as Discord had left the nuclear facility with the guard. Andy got to Gwyn, though, and subtly convinced her to not bring about the end of the world. Of course, Gwyn obliged because she was not technically a bad person. You know, in the first film, based on Niall's visions of Gwyn's cyclical process of dying and getting resurrected, the guard diagnosed her as someone who must have gone clinically insane. Did you sense any of that insanity in the old guard too? Her decision to blow up a nuclear facility seemed really generic, and her decision to not blow it up after a brief chat with Andy felt dumb. Gwyn was built up to be the big bad of the film, and she had every reason to be. However, I guess the writer just couldn't tolerate a South Asian woman stealing everyone's thunder. That's why he had to introduce a white woman into the plot to turn a complicated dynamic into a convoluted one, whilst hogging the limelight for a particularly confusing reason, which I'll get to in a bit. Hence, the emotions that were simmering between Gwyn and Andy just got resolved so casually because the writer was in such a hurry to set up the sequel, which I'll also get to in a bit. Also, a great opportunity to do a lovers to enemies to lovers again arc has been ruined, and in my opinion, that's just inexcusable. The only thing that's more frustrating than the obtuse manner in which the transfer of Booker's immortality and Gwyn's return to normalcy have been handled is the exploration of Discord's motive. Yes, during the Old Guard 2's ending, Discord was kind enough to reveal her villainous plan to Andy, yet I still failed to make sense of it. So, from what I understood, Discord roped in Gwyn with the promise of ending all the immortals, the guard, who were interfering in the lives of the mortals to make them better. She knew that once the news of Gwyn's survival reached Andy's ears, she'd come for him, and so would her entire team. Out of all the members of the guard, Discord wanted Niall the most, because she had the power to take away one's immortality on account of her being the last immortal. Discord apparently knew that the process of transferring one's powers while they were at the brink of losing them was real. So, she aimed to capture Niall and the rest of the guard, get Niall to strip them of their powers, and then force all of them to give their immortality to her. Yes, Discord was the first immortal, but maybe a year or two ago, she had lost her ability to come back from the dead. Hence, she initiated this endeavor to capture all the immortals and consume their powers. Why did she use this nuclear facility as bait? Plan to get the guard? Why didn't she just abduct them before when they were spread all across the globe searching for Booker and going after Gwyn and herself? Because that Indonesian nuclear facility had the technology to use liquid nitrogen on the immortals? Because that specific nuclear power plant was the best to do a divide and conquer maneuver at? What's the difference between abducting them earlier in the film and abducting them at the end of the film, other than setting up a sequel? Discord said that she was aware of the fact that the immortals wouldn't give up their powers willingly, but she was ready to torture them until they did. Doesn't torture count as coercion? Won't that just hinder the transfer? She seemed mighty confident about her methods. So, I guess she knows more about immortal culture than I do. The other thing that she was awfully sure about was Niall's willingness to turn the guard into mortals. Initially, I thought that Discord would just torture her friends in front of her until she did her bidding. Then I was reminded that Niall has a family. Before becoming an immortal, she used to live with her mother and brother. Therefore, it's possible that Discord will use them as leverage to make Niall her puppet. Maybe I'm overestimating Discord as a villain, and she'll just resort to torturing the guard. By the way, all of this still doesn't answer what Discord will do after becoming the only immortal in the world. Politics? Religion? War? Philanthropy? Space exploration? I think that last one is the best thing that an immortal can do in order to answer the question, are we alone in this universe? That said, I'm pretty sure Discord is doing all this for something like bringing back slavery or normalizing colonialism. She's white, after all. There are only a couple of the ways they know how to make their time on Earth meaningful. In the Old Guard 2's ending, we saw Andy nursing Gwyn back to health, and the latter vowed to help her girlfriend on her mission to rescue the members of her team. How? Well, Gwyn has a half-decent idea of Discord's operations. So, maybe that'll help the duo track her down. The journey will be long and arduous. But that'll give the filmmakers the chance to actually flesh out Andy and Gwyn's relationship, which is undoubtedly the need of the hour. I guess that quest will be juxtaposed with scenes of Discord torturing the guard and their loved ones. I know that these movies are R-rated, but they have failed to push that certification to its limits. The third movie has the perfect opportunity to defy expectations and approach Hannibal, the TV show, and Crimes of the Future levels of body horror. Much like Discord, Merrick also promised to torture the immortals, and it was so juvenile. So, whoever is going to direct The Old Guard 3, if you're reading this, please remedy this. By the way, I don't think Copley is surviving the third installment, unless he is dead already. We saw him probably get abducted. We didn't see him with Andy and Gwyn. Hence, it's safe to assume that he is in Discord's lair. He is ex-CIA, but if Discord goes overboard with the torture, he is going to croak and serve as motivation for Niall to become Discord's servant or defy her until she and her team are found by Andy and Gwyn. In addition to all that, I think another immortal is going to die to restore Gwyn's powers so that she can live out her love story with Andy or just live a proper life, which was cut short by humans. If the movie wants to go in a tragic direction, either Andy or Niall will sacrifice their power. For a second, I thought that all the immortals might just give up their powers to Discord and then trap her in something similar to the Iron Maiden, thereby subjecting her to centuries of torture. But the Guard isn't capable of something that vindictive, I suppose. They're too committed to keeping the world clean from all kinds of villains, and they won't be able to do that if all of them become mortal. I suppose they'll just find a way to kill Discord or make her see the error of her ways and continue helping mankind as best they can. Anyway, those are just my thoughts on the ending of The Old Guard 2. What are your opinions on the same? Feel free to share them in the comments section below.